Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We only have half an hour, so I'm going to jump right in. I know people are still joining us, and that's a great thing, but we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Janice Willer, and I'm the Assistant Director of International Admission at St. Mary's College, and I'm here with a handful of my wonderful colleagues from all over the United States, and we are going to talk to you about the college essay. We are partnering today with CCAA, which is the National Catholic Colleges Association, Admission Association, and we are here to bring you information about a variety of subjects today and also Thursday, as well as allow you to participate in some interactive events and asking counselors questions directly, as well as participating in a couple of fun games where you can win prizes and even the potential to get a scholarship. So with that being said, we're happy that you're joining us tonight, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into the college essay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Jones, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for Spring Hill College. And so I just wanted to start by welcoming you. We're talking about the college essay. And so the college essay is the place where you get to identify yourself and share your identity with admissions counselors. And so some key points you might want to highlight and think about are: who are you and where are you going? Where do you want to go in the college process, the college search process, application? Where do you want to go? So you really want to expose your identity and really make it about you. Identify those things which make you, you, and why you matter in the essay. You want to share those things. My colleagues will talk about other points in the essay, but the general picture is to make it about you and share those things which make you special, which make you unique with your college admissions officer.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Pepin, and I'm an Associate Dean of Admission for International Recruitment at Stonehill College, just south of Boston, Massachusetts. I love the essay. It's my favorite part of a student's application because we get to read a story about you. You are the protagonist here. You're the main character. This is not a time to be shy. It's not a time to speak heavily about someone else. This is your application. So a lot of advice that I give to students centers around this idea that Jacob mentioned, that you're the star. It's your identity on display. It's important to mention people who have influenced you in your life, but you want to avoid long, detailed stories about other people and kind of spend much more of that essay talking about how you're using their legacy and their influence in your life, if you choose to write about that. Another piece of advice I want to give you is that if there's a specific essay question, make sure you address it and answer it thoroughly. Of course, you can be unique and take your own spin on it. But one of the criteria that we're looking for is that if you choose a specific question, or if a college asks you a specific question, we want to see how well you answer it while putting your own flair in there. The other thing that can be helpful here is being creative when you can. If you have that creative piece in your identity and you want to show it to us, your first line or your first paragraph is an awesome way to show that to us. Here's one of my favorite lines from last year. Fill up a balloon with helium, put it up to your lips, and inhale as much helium as possible. Now read my essay aloud. You are reading it in my voice. I can instantly hear this student talking. It was such a good essay. I learned so much about her. And she talked about using her voice in a really unique way in her community and how strong it could be. The other piece of this is that the essay isn't it's not the main factor here. A strong essay is not going to make or break your application and instantly make you the best candidate in the world. But a good essay can make a qualified candidate stand out. It's so important to remember that when someone like me, like an admission counselor, is reading your application, we're your advocate in the application process. We want to admit you, and we love reading essays that help us show that you are a great fit. When we talk about you to our colleagues in the committee admission process, when we're saying, hey, we should admit Jose to our university. He's incredible. We might use your essay as a talking point in trying to bring you into our communities. The other piece about the essay is that when you pay close attention to detail and you make sure that everything is grammatically correct and you haven't put in any careless errors, it shows that you're committed to this next step of education. So a good essay can make it stand out in those ways.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Deville, and I serve as the Director of International Admissions for the University of Notre Dame. And I'm going to speak about sort of the nuts and bolts of the application essay. So one of the big things to pay attention to are the length requirements. There is a limit to how much you can write for most essays that you'll be submitting. And so you really want to make sure that you organize your essay appropriately depending on the length that is provided to you. You may have a lot to say on a topic, but you might run out of characters that you can use to tell that story. So you definitely want to make sure that you're structuring it properly. In the reverse direction, you certainly don't want your essays to be too short because that could really speak to maybe a rush to get them done and get them submitted, to fulfill the requirement and move along. So really just shoot for an optimal length or use the full amount of characters that are there with a really highly organized application essay. And speaking of organized, you definitely want to proofread. You want to really make sure that there are no typos, there are no cut-off sentences, also no run-on sentences, and just really making sure that there's a good balance between the different ways that you're communicating the information to the people who'll be reading your application. And that being said, you don't want to proof it to death. You don't want to take the very elements out of it that make it unique to you or that really help to tell your story. So you definitely want to come at it with sort of a balanced approach, strive for really great grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, but then still make sure that it's telling your story. And, that just really is the last point is, be authentically yourself. There is not really a correct answer that we're looking for. We're looking for your answer. Most of us, by the time we get to the essays, we've seen a lot of your application, and this is kind of the icing on the cake. And so you really want to make sure that it really speaks to the thread that we've already witnessed in your application. So you may have a friend to help you read through it and make sure that it really speaks to who you are.
Thanks, Mary. It's back to me again, and I want to let you know that even though you're all, I'm sure, pros at attending all of these virtual events by now, that you can go ahead and throw any questions that you have into the Q&A chat, and we'll answer them either live or as we go through. And we are going to save some time at the end, plenty of time at the end for you to ask those specific questions that you might have. All right, so Mary did a great job of telling us about some of the technical parts of the essay. Now I'm going to give you some insight into what a university is actually looking for in an essay. At my college, I read the essays for all of the applicants in my territories. And these are a few of the things that I am frequently looking for. Be specific, be precise, be funny, be creative. Now you're thinking, okay, Jenna, that's a lot for one essay, especially when there might be some character limitations. And you're right. We have high but not unattainable expectations for the essays that we receive. Essays are not judged solely on the topic you choose, but rather how well it's handled and what we learn about you. So let's break this down a little bit more. Be specific. Use specific anecdotes and examples. If you talk about something you have struggled with, perhaps, give us an example. Just saying that you faced a huge challenge and overcame it without explaining it can leave us hanging. Everybody has challenges. How did yours impact you, perhaps, in a specific circumstance? For example, I have a son who has significant anxiety. If he were to choose to write about it in his essay next year when he's applying, I would encourage him to describe it through a single memory. Talk about your sweaty palms or your heart racing right before you have to give a big presentation or something like that. We don't need your personal details, but we want to walk with you in your story. Be precise. Don't try to cover too much. Go in depth about one moment in your life. A great analogy would be a photo album. Show us one picture, not the entire album. You don't have to build your whole life into one page. It gets too complicated and it becomes difficult to try to explain everything in just one single essay. Be funny. Humor is fine, provided it is not taken to the extreme. As we say often in admissions, if you aren't funny, the essay isn't the time to try to be funny. An example of a funny essay I read was when a student chose to discuss the age-old battle of the proper way to hang toilet paper, over or under. She did not get into anything gross or revealing, but she chose to discuss something really funny that we could all relate to and tied it back to her education and why she was choosing our school. As you can imagine, it gave us a laugh, and it also really caught our attention, which is something then, you know, I'm going to my colleague in the office next door like, oh, look, you got to read this. This is so great. So that's what really captivates us when you're funny. If you're not funny, it's okay to write about serious issues. If that's not the way you want to go in your essay, that's fine. But know that it's okay to share funny things with us as well. Be creative. It's your story. Find a way to make it creative. One of the best essays I ever read was one where the writer compared each family member of hers to her favorite book, and she chose a character in her favorite book to connect each family member to. And it was just a really great way to describe her family members, and you can just picture it in your mind, right? She then circled back to how each of them helped her to get to where she is today, and she was portraying herself as the heroine of this story. So it was just really creative, and it's something that really sticks with me even years later. You have an interesting story, so let's hear it. With that, I'm going to pass it on to my next colleague, Chrissy.
Hi everyone, I'm Christy Maceros, Senior Assistant Director of International Admission at St. Peter's University, which is in Jersey City, New Jersey. I'll be talking to you about things to avoid. Number one, don't sound like a narrating robot, as if Alexa or Siri wrote it. Add your personality. It's hard to tell tone via written text, so try your best to show your personality with the written word. If you're speaking about a specific event that shaped your life, describe how you were impacted and how it changed your life. It must be a pretty important event if you're writing your entire college essay about this event, right? Lastly, this should be a no-brainer. Do not include foul or rude language in your essay. There are plenty of ways to intellectually discuss something in the English language without resorting to crude language. We all have different opinions in life, and that is fine. Just try not to sound arrogant. And with that, I'll pass it to Ron.
Thanks, Christy. Hi, everyone. My name is Ron Beck, and I'm the Director of International Recruitment and Admissions at Salve Regina University, with more things to avoid in the essay. The first point is I wouldn't use big SAT words or words you find in a thesaurus to impress the reader. You really risk losing your voice or exposing a disconnect with your English grades. You know, you see students who are getting, B pluses in their English grades, and suddenly their essay reads like it's a graduate student thesis. You don't want that to happen. You also don't want to write something because you think it sounds impressive, or you believe it's a topic that we want to read, or because the theme is popular. I have to say I was pretty surprised this year. I didn't receive as many COVID essays as I thought I was going to receive, so maybe that's a good thing. Choose a topic that's important to you and avoid cramming multiple topics into one. Don't repeat information from other parts of the application, like your list of activities. If there's a particular activity that's important to you, stay focused and expand on it. Why and how it is important to you. Don't miss this opportunity to express your individuality. Uniqueness and individuality can stand out. And the essay is not necessarily a creative writing assignment. You don't need a detailed story that really says nothing about you. And lastly, try not to worry. The essay is only one part of the application process that universities take into consideration. We see recommendations, grades over several years, your involvements, your interests, perhaps an interview or a short answer response, maybe even an art portfolio or an audition component as part of the application piece.
So I know that's a lot of information in a short period of time, and we certainly tell you all the do's and don'ts, and then we say, you know, don't stress about it, right? I know that's the funniest part of all, I think. But take your time, have a second set of eyes to edit it, and be yourself. And I think that your essay is going to be just fine. So we are going to go ahead and open up to questions, and I see that we have one here, unless somebody has already answered it here. Will we be receiving a recording of the presentation? We are recording it, but we haven't decided if we're going to distribute it openly to everyone yet, or if we are going to be distributing it only to high school counselors, but that will be to be determined. And I see, is there any specific words you don't like to see on an essay? For example, words like amazing, or the phrase I love pizza. I love that one. All right, so I'm going to let this one go to each of you. We're going to start with the people I can see in my screen. Christy, can you tell us what you might want to avoid, specific words in an essay?
Hard to say. Just don't be so repetitive, and don't use foul language. But if you love something, you can say I love. You love pizza, you love pizza. You love your toilet paper one way, you love it that way for a reason.
I love that. All right, John.
Yeah, I don't think there are any words that I don't like. It's more about what Ron was mentioning. I don't love to see essays that keep telling me the same thing that the application is telling me. I like to use the example of, if you play football and you coach football and you work at a sporting goods store, maybe your essay should be about something else. Just give me another side of you. That's really the thing that I look for, more than I'm looking for specific words.
Mary.
I don't know that I have any phrases that I think you should avoid. I think you definitely want to make sure whatever you're sharing with the admission committee through your essay is really reflective of the question that's being asked. Sometimes we'll ask questions and it's pretty clear that students have kind of copied and pasted a different essay and hoped that it would, suit the need. So I would just say, be really mindful of directly addressing what they're asking. But we've seen all manner of responses to different things. And as long as it's sincere and heartfelt, it has worked really well for us.
Jacob.
Yeah, I agree with all my colleagues here. I think you want to use your words. You don't want to borrow someone else's words. So definitely use the words that make you you, but also, use words that are descriptive. So, if you're talking about a particular day that something happened, describe that day using descriptives, use adjectives. So that's my advice.
And last but certainly not least, Ron.
Well, thank you. It really does depend on the topic and what kind of words you're using in that writing of the topic. I would probably try to avoid repeating it. If you really love pizza, I wouldn't try to overuse the word love too many times in your writing.
Totally agree. So we have another question that says, what do you consider an interesting topic to talk about in an essay? I'm kind of a boring person. Okay, so never, don't say that. You can make anything exciting, even, I've seen essays about how a student recounts one specific everyday instance in their life, but then they relate it back in a strong way. Like they talk about how they have this routine for their daily life, and then they somehow take a creative moment and tie that into how they hope to launch themselves into the future. So you don't have to have, gone skydiving or something to write an interesting topic. You can find a way to pick that in everyday life if you write it well. So does anyone else want to answer that? Add to that? No, because we have a lot of questions coming in, so I want to keep going through here. All right, this one is a good one. What are some cliche topics? This is a really good one. One for me is the sports essay. I think that's one that I can definitely say is cliche, but I'm going to let someone else have a turn to talk. I see Mary nodding. Mary, do you want to tell us a little bit about some cliche topics?
Sure. I think we've all of us seen many essays about someone talking about not making the sports team or not making the debate team, or maybe, being shy, but then joining the debate team and showing that they are not shy. We see a lot of those. It's great if that's your personal narrative and you want to share that, but just know that it is a common topic that all of us see quite frequently.
Could I add
John?
one in there?
Okay.
I said it in my slide, the grandma essay, and I think that's universally known in college admission circles, where a student really loves their grandma and they want to show how much they've learned from them. And then they write about grandma for 80% of their essay. And then they realize at that point, oh no, I should write about myself. And then there's just not enough time to finish it and tie it together. That's a pretty cliche one.
And we would certainly, when we get those essays, I'm like, man, I wish grandma could come. She sounds really awesome, right? You know, like we're like, geez, she's amazing. All right, so the next question is talking about an illness appropriate? Ron, would you like to take this one?
Sure. Well, obviously there are various stages and conditions with illness. Whether something is a chronic ailment or something that's actually debilitating and has really affected your ability to learn. We may want to know a little bit about that, but your approach to it can be pretty healthy, I think, showing us how you're coping with this illness and maybe succeeding in spite of it. Can really show something about your personality. So again, I think it depends on the type of illness and the condition that you're actually going through and the struggles that you go through. I'd be careful not to use the illness as a crutch for anything that may have happened during your years of schooling, whether or not you were failing your Spanish class because you had a sports injury of some kind that kept you away from baseball. But it really does depend on the condition, and you may want to talk with some teachers or some counselors who might be familiar with the condition and actually practice a little bit on how to convey it if it's really that important to you to include as a personal statement.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Ron. Let's see. What would you say are the qualities that make an essay memorable? Jacob, would you like to talk about this one?
Sure, thank you. From reading so many essays, the essays that are truly memorable are the ones that incorporate all of the things that all of our panelists from admissions have been discussing. So something that links creativity and humor and the way that you would describe something. If you can do all of those things, if you can incorporate all of the elements that you've learned about in this presentation, then I think you'll have a really memorable essay for your admissions counselor. I think of some of the essays that I've read that have been about truly ordinary things. For example, there was a student that wrote about going through the drive-through line, and that was just a simple, ordinary event, but they made it creative. They talked about the atmosphere. They talked about their interaction with the person giving them their food. And all of those things made a fantastic essay. And of course, incorporating correct grammar, making sure that you proofread, sharing your essay with another person so that they can read it before you submit it. Those are all good tips. So, making something memorable is not very difficult as long as you are trying to incorporate all of those things.
And for my colleagues, we have more questions still coming in. So if you want to add, I'm just going to call on you randomly, continue that process. But if you want to add something, feel free to unmute yourself and just pop in there. The next question is, what is the best personal statement you have ever read?
I could answer this one.
Perfect.
It was the year 2015, and a student told me how he had invented some sort of home water purification system. And this is in, I believe it was Bangladesh. So the way the student described inventing this device that could help the community and why he wanted to study whatever he wanted to study, I think biology would play in later on in life. I thought that was so cool. Also, as a foodie, any essay that talks about food, like I think there was one student that compared herself to like ham and the life of ham. It was so fascinating, just like sets. But so these are the kinds of essays that really stick out to me.
I also have one that stands out, and I think a lot of students can relate to it because many of the students may have lived in multiple places or different kinds of places in their home country. But there was a girl who had lived in 3 very different countries. I think it was Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, and Germany. And she wrote about the experience of grocery shopping in each of those places and sort of the sights, the sounds, and the cultural nuances of each place. And it was very playful and adventurous, but it also gave a good sense of the things that she had experienced and the parts of the culture she picked up on. So that was a great topic.
All right, we have only 4 short minutes left. So if we can try to get through all these questions quickly. And the next one would be, are there any specific political topics to avoid?
I'll take that one.
Perfect.
I don't think there's any topic that you should avoid, but I think you should avoid the attitude of I'm right, you're wrong. So I think if you ever make an argument or a statement in an essay, be academic about it, know your research, know the other side, and be positive in your statements instead of being divisive and confrontational.
And someone next asked, I know we need to talk about ourselves, but how can I prevent using I in an excessive way? I'm going to let you handle this one, Ron.
Oh dear, unless you're talking about your eyeglasses and your eyes, it's a different topic completely. But very difficult to avoid using the I if you're writing a lot about what's happening to you as a person. Try doing a few things in third person or second person, just so that you're not starting every sentence with an I in it, and see if you can't vary up the word usage, because that's one of the things I don't know if we mentioned, but varying your words a little bit can be helpful in the essay process.
And would any of you say that if a person's essay isn't very good, that it would hurt their application? Jacob, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I would say your essay factors into your application if it's required for the application, and so it's certainly not the only factor affecting your application, but it's an important part. And so I would say that you know, if you turn in something that you know is not very good, and you know that you know, you could have worked on a little more, you could have gotten help for, before you get to that step, hopefully you will consider all of the sources available to you, all the resources that you have. And so certainly we don't want to get to the part where your essay is affecting your application in a negative way. But I would certainly say that, you know, consult the resources that you have around you. Ask your teachers, your counselors, you know, other students to look at your essay to help you really produce something good that you feel good about in submitting.
Fantastic. All right, we have 1 minute left here. Is it possible to be a storyteller in a 50-word limit essay? Oh, that's a tough one. I would say yes, but you have to be very creative. I mean, think about Twitter, right? Like that's a tough one, but we've learned how to shorten some of our abilities to tell a story. It actually reminds me of Hemingway's, was his shortest story, that is For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn. So those are, you know, only 6 words, and that tells an entire story and encapsulates a lot of things. So that's one way to do it. All right. And I think we made it through all of our questions. Thank you again so much for joining us. And we're really happy to be here with you this evening. And we hope that you learned a lot about how to make the best essay for your college application.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Feel free to reach
everyone.
out to any of us as well with, you see our email addresses here. You're welcome to reach out to any of us with any questions that we didn't get to or as you think of them later.